welcome back to PA Chalk Up. I'm your host Manny, and today we have Ray Zingler. Hi Ray, how we doing?
Doing well. I appreciate you having me on.
No, it's all good. We've kind of been speaking offline as well, and again, I've been following your work for a while now, and it's one of the most refreshing ones because I'm always learning from it, and you're putting out the real life NCC coach like behind the scenes, which I always appreciate. Um, but if you let us know who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are.
For sure. Yeah, my name is Ray Zingler. I'm a strength and conditioning coach from Marietta, Georgia, which is in the southeastern United States. I grew up as kind of a childhood meathead. My parents were both coaches. My father coached American football. My mother was a cheerleading coach, so I was around coaching and exercise and fitness my entire life. And I knew from the time I was 12 years old I wanted to get into the field of strength and conditioning. And I saw my father go the university route with football coaching, got out of the coaching realm because he felt like he didn't have much control over his time. And he got into the entrepreneurial realm. He owns a commercial flooring business. But essentially, I saw my dad's love for coaching that kind of was pulled out of him via the time that had to be put into the university sector. And then I saw him become very successful in this entrepreneurial world. So as I grew up, I kind of knew, okay, I want to be a coach. I want to be a strength and conditioning consultant. That's another part of the business that I run. But I wanted to do it on my own terms, if that makes sense. So I kind of combined my father's coaching love and his entrepreneurial love and put them together, so that way I could coach in the private sector and own and operate my own business, as well as employ staff members that make Zingler Strength, which is the name of our business, what it is today.
100%. And for everyone who isn't up with his socials, here is his work. But one of the things that we were talking about is that time frame that goes into SC coaching and running your own business. How does that sort of translate, seeing your father going from having no time or time constraints with the football world and then running your own thing, and now how that time consumption goes?
For sure. No, it's a great question. And yeah, it was something that my father loved coaching. It was one of those things that was his passion. His father was a college football coach, high school football coach as well. But then when my sister and I were born in the early 90s, my dad said, I love what I do, but I'm coaching other people's kids more than I'm coaching and raising my own. So he kind of made the disciplined choice to forego his passion to pursue something else. And I learned a lot from that, and I recognized too, I got a very early start in my strength and conditioning career. We had a basement gym that my dad trained me in my childhood home. And once I turned 18 years old, it was like 3 days after I graduated high school. We had this, 400 square foot weight room in our basement. And we had a little bit of my dad had a side business going on where he was training local athletes in the community. Nothing like we have operating today, but it was already a platform that existed. And my dad trained me up since the time I was 12 years old. Like we've been talking about before we got on air, it's very simple stuff. I picked up on it. At 18, you feel like you know a lot more than you really do. But I knew enough to be dangerous. So I took on a couple of clients as an 18-year-old kid. I hadn't even started college yet. And anyway, I went through college and I kind of grew Zingler Strength in this basement gym. But to answer the question, I watched a lot of successful people, and a lot of successful people, they get off to a fast start, right? So I knew at 18 years old, at 20 years old, 24 years old, I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't have a bunch of life stuff. I don't have any debt. I had time, right? And I know that time was my most valuable asset. So in the early years, well, I don't say this as a badge of honor. I grinded my face off. I was working 80-hour weeks, 100-hour weeks, from 20 to 27 years old. I I didn't have Thanksgiving with my parents. I didn't spend time on vacation, and it was work, 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 work. And people would argue that I was unbalanced. My friendships kind of went down the drain a little bit, but I was focusing on building this. But during this time, I was able to make some strategic investments in real estate, kind of build a portfolio, so to speak, so that by the time I got to 30 years old, I don't want to say that, I have no financial stressors at all, but I spent that first decade really being intelligent with my finances as well. So now I've kind of built out a little bit of leverage. So that way, now that I've got a 5-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter and a newborn, I still work my ass off, but I work more on my terms than
Mm,
being forced into it. So again, I think anytime you get into any entrepreneurial realm or a coaching realm, you know, the game is serving others, right? So you have to have an element of selflessness regardless of at what stage you're at. But I am now kind of in what I would call that second phase of my career, to where I don't own every second of my time, but I control a lot more of those seconds than
mm.
I did when I was 23 years old 10 years ago. If that makes sense.
100%. It's always nice to see the videos of your oldest son working out with you as well,
Oh
and
yeah.
it kind of gives me that link between how your father coached you, you're now coaching your son, and it's that link that's beautiful to watch as well.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. And it's so funny. Like my dad, when he trained me growing up, and the science and the research that we had 20 years ago isn't what we have today. But it was like dad, who didn't even really know, just because it wasn't his like lack of care, but we didn't have all the information that we have today. And he kind of trained me up on a lot of those old like 1980s and 90s bodybuilding type splits and all this stuff. But again, it was like, it was squat, bench, deadlift, sprint, hills, stairs. It was all the same stuff. And again, I don't want to sit here and give him too much credit and make him feel like he was ahead of his time, but it was like we didn't know what the bullshit was, so it was like we gave him the simple anyway. And here I am as a relatively average athlete, benching 400 plus pounds, squatting 500 pounds, jumping 39 inches. I was doing all this stuff that, like you're supposed to have all the manuals and everything to be able to do this. My dad just turned on classic rock music and we busted our asses 3 to 4 times a week and good things happened. So I took dad's kind of like ignorance, of
Mm,
not knowing, and applied a little bit of science to that, to maybe instead of going 4 sets of 10, understanding the value of, 5 sets of 3 or whatever, just from like a strength power output emphasis versus like a pure hypertrophy emphasis. But again, it's like, you go through these phases, right? Where it's like in the beginning, you're bright eyed and bushy tailed and you know all the science and you got everything and you got to make sure your feet are totally square and this and that.
mhm.
And then in year 3, you hear some like new terminology and now you're like, oh, I'm going to bring some new thing. And then by year 10, you're like, dude, it's just fucking squats and kettlebell swings. Like there's no like fancy to it. So it's funny how you like
100%. 100%.
devolve. I don't mean devolve, but it's like you go back around and you find out that like the stuff that you got into, in the beginning, that's the real stuff. You just try to get better at doing that.
I always say that the simplest things is what works the best. Like your muscles and body can only move the way it's designed. You can't create this high tech movement that targets XYZ.
Right.
Like that's been done. All the movements are there.
Exactly.
The only thing that changes is limitations. Does your athlete or client have any restrictions in these planes of movement? How do we overcome that?
Right. Yeah, it's so
That is it.
it's so funny. Like you get some of these and young kids too, and even some of these like 20s-year-old kids. They're oh, I got to do incline dumbbell for my upper chest because I really got to do muscle confusion or whatever these terms are. And I always tell them, I said, buddy, I promise you, you might be smart, but you're not smart enough to confuse your muscles. You might be confused up here, but you don't have the ability to confuse your muscles. And it's so funny, but it's a phase, and I went through it too, where I did the chest, back, shoulders, arms, and I did all the stuff. And but you eventually learn that like how we think about it in this like complex,
Mhm,
focus is not it. And it's again, if you want to be a bodybuilder and that's like your whole goal, okay, you can do like overhead tricep extensions with the cable and like look fancy and all that if you're getting on stage to compete as a bodybuilder. But as an athlete or even just a general person trying to improve their well-being, you know, cut away the fluff. Like, do you think your
mhm.
triceps are going to know that you did a push down instead of a push up? No, just train your arms, right? Just shut up and do it and get out and go do other things with your life. I think a lot of people get caught up in the weeds of that. And it's like, if you watch the experienced coaches, and I mean the truly experienced ones, you'll find out that they're the simplest. It's those 24,
Mhm.
25-year-old guys that are trying to win on Instagram. They do this new thing and they try to confuse people and make them think that, oh, look at how special I am. What that actually is, though, that's a lack of confidence within themselves because they're trying to project an image that they don't even know doesn't work, but they feel like they've got to try to trick that kid's dad who's watching the other end of the phone screen so that way they can pay him $100 an hour. It's bullshit. But again, if you stay in the industry long enough, you eventually get worn so out of the bullshit
Mhm.
that you're forced back into the simplicity because that's the only thing that works. And if you care about performance, you care about simple. That's just the way it works.
100%. We were speaking offline and we were saying that a lot of people think that this industry is hard because of all the science and all these things that go into it. But we were saying it's the simplest industry to be in. Get your fundamentals, like squat, hip hinge, knee dominant,
Yep.
uh, just get your movement right,
Sure.
posterior chain, and that's all you need. Like for athletes, and Coach Mac has the best saying for this: we're 10% of their performance, but during our 10%, we have to mitigate the 90% that they get up to.
Amen. Amen.
And for that, we just have to think about okay, let's. And then again, I'm currently in the middle of bringing out a blog post where I'm breaking down what I see in the industry, and the best thing that I talk about is your needs analysis, and not just oh yeah, he plays this sport, he needs this, 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 and this. Okay, but then what kind of movements is involved in that?
Sure.
And we can't. There's no such thing as sport specific.
Right.
Fucking
Right.
bullshit.
Right. It's sport practice. You want sport specific. If you play football, play football. If you play basketball, go play basketball. That's the
100%.
extent
You
of
cannot
sport
get
specific.
faster if you don't sprint.
Right.
It's fucking simple.
Amen. Yep. Yep.
But if we're thinking about movements that they're going to do in the field, let's think about okay, what movements go against that movement. Let's
Amen.
build out their opposite muscles
Amen.
so that
Yep.
they can counterbalance whatever they're doing.
For
Let
sure.
their movements be movements in the sports field.
Right.
Let's do our thing in the gym so that they can perform their sport. That's our
100%.
job.
That's everything. That's the whole thing. And that's why, to kind of piggyback off your point, it frustrates the hell out of me. We have a lot of, female athletes as well. And what they'll do is they might play lacrosse or they might play basketball and they're playing 12 months a year, right, of their sport. And the entire time at practice, what are they doing? They're running, they're cutting, they're shifting, they're jumping, they're doing all of these things, almost too much of these things. And then when they want to seek out training, they'll go to a speed and agility trainer who's going to have them do what? Run, cut, shift, jump. So now you have too much volume of running, cutting, jumping, and shifting in sport. And then now for training, you're going to add more of what you're already doing too much of, thinking there's going to be a positive response to that. No, that there's no way, oh, we're doing too much of X. Let's add more X and hope for a positive return. I mean, it's asinine to me. But again, that's how the general consumer thinks. It's if I want to get better at the mile, I got to run 1 mile every day.
Mhm.
Okay, for the first 4 weeks, that'll work and you'll beat your time by 10 seconds. Do that for 6 years, okay? And then eventually you're going to hit a point of diminishing return and you're going to get burnt out. So what do you have to do? Now you got to run a half a mile at a faster pace. You got to run 2 miles to build up more capacity. You have to look at it from a different angle. But beating the shit out of what they're already beating the shit out of too much and expecting that somehow is going to have a favorable return. And then when they get injured, we blame bad luck. It's like what the hell?
Mhm.
We have all the data, we have all the information that shows that what we're doing is bullshit. But ignorance is bliss, and that girl over there is doing it, so we should do it too. It's nonsense.
That's another big thing with our industry is he's doing this, so I need to be doing that.
Yeah,
Forgetting that everyone's individuals. And I do a lot of research. And again, I'm an SSC coach, but I do like the research side of it because it gives you a little bit more insight on what could be happening.
absolutely.
So, and I've done conferences on this and I've spoke about this, and I'm a practical science coach.
Sure.
Like the science matters a little bit, but how you apply it and does it apply? Like not all research is going to apply to every situation, every scenario that ever comes up with.
Right.
Female athletes specifically, because so much changes within their month and from month to month, like their menstrual cycles throws them off
Oh,
fucking
everything.
completely.
Yeah. I get
But
into it all the time with the girls that, oh, I missed a weight that I should have got. And it's like I'm at the point now where I'm so, in tune and close and paying attention to what's going on. And like I see that her face was breaking out a little bit, and I see that her mood, she was a little bit hot. I know what's going. I'm not going to sit there and call her out in front of the group and make a
Mhm.
scene out of it, but I'll purposely, if I know her weight's supposed to be 225, I'll have her go 205 because I want her to win right there. The science book isn't going to teach you that. That's stuff that you have to pick up on to be able to
100%.
respond to that stuff.
And so much of coaching is that it's you're having to respond to what's happening in front of you, and no degree, no course can prepare you for that. It's
Right,
just you have to be with athletes. You have to know, okay, he's or she's running hot today. Let me
right.
not get in their face today.
Absolutely. I always say that you can write the best program, but the best coaches don't coach off of Excel spreadsheets. The best coaches are the best at auto regulating. I pay attention to everything. When the athletes come in, how's their posture? How's their tone of voice? Are they excited to be there? I always know if the kids are real chatty and they're getting into it, we're going to have a great day. If she comes in today and her shoulders are slumped over, we're still going to train, but I don't give a shit what I had planned. I'm going to find a way to build wins into her day because, to your point that you spoke on earlier, I'm trying to fill her cup, right? To take from her cup. That's not what a performance coach does. You've got to be well aware of how the kids are presenting, and having done this in person is the only way you can build that skill, right? You can send online training to people, and I do it, but fortunately I have a really good relationship with a lot of the clients that I have where, hey, just shoot me straight. Are you out of town? Are you on vacation? Do you need a week off? Just sending somebody a blind program and saying, do 3 sets of 8 at 60%, that doesn't get you very far in the long term.
Hmm. I've got an athlete who's a sprinter, but he's also a policeman,
Oh, wow.
and
Cool.
he's just came off like a heavy week, and I was like, deload week for you it is.
Right. Yep. Yep. And then, you get them right, and they're like, "Oh, thank God." And in the beginning, they're like, "Oh, I don't need the deload. I'm hardcore. I can do it." And then all of a sudden, after 9 weeks, I send them like deload week, and they're like, "Thank you." You know what I mean? So that you learn to pick up on those things. And the other side of it is like getting ahead of them, right? They may not feel like they need a
Mhm.
deload week, but they also don't understand like the psychological and physiological responses associated with training. Like, I know you feel fine, but like you just pulled a big deadlift last week. There's going to be some central nervous system recovery that you may not feel in the expression of soreness right now in my hands or my, but you're likely not going to hit another big pull next week if you're strong enough. I've found that like the more advanced the kids or the clients are, the more rest they need, obviously, right? It's the young kids, like for example, with our sprinting. I'm a big believer in resting a minimum of 1 minute for every 10 yards sprinted. And with my fast kids, I got to give them that rest for them to be able to, reciprocate a quality output their next sprint. Whereas you've got an 11-year-old boy, he can sprint 10 yards or 20 yards or whatever it is, and then turn around and 30 seconds later do it again and beat his last time. Why? Because his outputs aren't as high. So that's one of those things that like understanding like the science behind recovery, aerobic, anaerobic threshold, understanding all that is, yes, important. But again, if I were to sit there with a group of 10, 12-year-old boys who are brand new to training and we're doing speed training, I know that the most prevalent action in a speed training session is rest. You should be resting more than you're sprinting, obviously. But if I sit there and only give them a sprint, 2 minute rest, sprint, and the whole session is 8 20 yards, they can do more because their outputs aren't as high. As the output increases, so does the emphasis on rest periods, in my opinion.
100%. The thing that I kind of always talk about as well is like rest is important for obviously getting back that energy, resources, and bringing all that back. And you kind of touched on it. Is as you're young, you've got like this resource sort of replenishes as quick
Yes,
as possible.
100%.
When you get older and your performance starts becoming a little bit more finite, and
Right,
you start specializing into your thing,
right,
these marginal gains are harder to come by. Like a
absolutely.
1% increase for a professional athlete is major.
It's insane. Oh, it's
It's
humongous.
major.
Right, absolutely.
Just 1%. And that's
Right.
what I think some coaches kind of miss the mark on, is that they're doing all these exercises thinking, oh, this is going to increase their performance by a fuck ton.
Right.
And I'm just like, it's kind of not how it works.
No, not at all. It's funny, like, my dad, when he was training me when I was very young, it was like just as the bench press, for example, he wanted to put on 5 pounds a month. If I could put 5 pounds a month on in a 12-month year, that's 60 pounds a month, which is a ton of weight, but again, I was a beginner, so I could get those type
Mhm.
of responses. And then when I got to, like, the peak of my strength, that 5 pounds a month, if I could put 5 pounds on my bench press a year, that was humongous, right? So it's again understanding that. And it's tough with a lot of the kids too, because again, I have some brand new beginners, obviously, but I've also have some experienced trainees, and they're young, their frontal lobe isn't fully developed. They're not dumb kids, but when they get those newbie gains in the first 6 months,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden they hit a little bit of a wall, you and I know that's natural, right? But a 15-year-old thinks they suck and got weaker. You know what I mean? So it's working on communicating to them how it actually works, that the stronger you are, the
The harder it
harder it
is.
is for your gains, especially in like upper body movements. It's one of those that you build a decent bench press or an overhead press or whatever the exercise is. It is hell to put on another 5 pounds, or sometimes with a deadlift or hex bar or whatever you're using, you can eke out another 5 to 10 pounds, every 2 months. But
Mhm.
sometimes you hit a 6 month wall, and the other side of it is I tell these kids, like, I don't care about your bench pressing strength. I care that you have upper body strength because I think that's important. But losing sleep over not getting a 5 pound PR at bench press when you're a world class athlete that plays soccer, like we got to learn to fight the right fights, right?
Mhm.
And
I guess
helping them
that
understand that.
90% versus that 10%.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate the competitive nature and they want to see
Mhm.
themselves grow and make progress. But again, we have to keep our eye on the correct ball. Is your goal to become the best bench presser you can or the best football player? Those are two different things because there's no bench press on any soccer pitch or football field. There's not, so
100%.
you can't
I always
fight that
say to
battle.
my athletes as well is like, what are we training for? Are we training for you to get better at your sport or to become a power lifter?
Right. For sure. For
And
sure.
for them, I'm just like, look, again, it's that 10% versus 90%. I'm here to make sure that the 90% of your practice, your whatever it is, goes smoother. But in saying that, and to your point, these stressings of, oh, I'm not improving, that's where that interpersonal connection comes in. And we spoke
Absolutely.
about it beforehand
100%.
about conscious coaching, is for you to understand how that works, you have to build that rapport, that
Right.
relationship, really create that buy-in with your athletes. And it's something that I've beat the horse so many times, even though
Right.
he's passed away far, far away. But we have that. That is our biggest tool. I don't care science. I don't care
Right.
lift weight. I
Right.
if you don't trust me, that's something that we need to hash out.
For sure, for sure. And to your point, it's like humans, we're emotional beings, right? So it's having some of these like robotic ways of thinking and thinking that, oh, they missed a weight. Oh, whatever. It's no big. You have to take the time to get in. You and I know it's no big deal. Like, it's okay. It's not going to affect their performance in their sport negatively. But if that girl goes home with a sour attitude and she's upset with herself, and now that negatively influences her self image. And now, when she's got a negative self image of herself and then she goes to practice that night, you can't just turn off that emotional switch, right? So, all of a
Mhm.
sudden, a missed deadlift that you and I didn't think about for 2 seconds, she let that fester for 2 hours. And then now that impacted her performance negatively on the field. Or can you take that 5 minutes? Can you explain what's going on and maybe relate to her? Hey, you had a great deadlift last week. You just said you were at your friend's house last night. Y'all were up till 2 o'clock in the morning. Your nutrition wasn't
Mhm.
on point. Now that's how you can take a negative and turn that into a positive. It doesn't mean you're going to win every single time, but you have to look to be able to put value somewhere, and helping them resonate with that helps them because now the next time they miss, they can go through the checklist of what potentially led them to miss,
I
and
bet
some.
that creates better athletes as well.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And something that I've learned to do is I always train off of like training maxes. For example, if I know somebody can squat 405, I'm going to set their training max at 375. So that way I build in some leeway to where there's a 30
Mhm.
pound window. And there's ways to do it with velocity based training and all that. A lot of it too, with my experienced athletes, we train totally off of feel. So what I'll say, instead of following a percentage scheme, hey guys, we're going to work up to a quality set of 5 today or a quality set of 3. And I keep the metrics in the background. Like I know what weight should be on
Mhm.
the bar for that set of 3. And without even giving them numbers, because I'm working with competitive kids that want to be there, that want to improve. This isn't just some like slap ass weight training class where they're trying to be lazy. It's not that. And about 99% of the time, those kids, when I just give them the freedom to kind of put their own weights on, they're within 5% of what I would have programmed them to put anyway, but they've taken the emotional pressure off to where, hey, maybe you came in, you were feeling a little sore, not great. You go through the warm up, you do your first warm up set, and then by that third set, they're damn near where they would have been. Or if I were to come to them and said, you got to do this your first set, this your second set, this your third set, they're looking at the number on their second set and they're
Mhm.
already saying, I know I'm not going to get it today. I don't feel right. I'm a little bit tired, where you just let them go. And guess what? If they missed by 10 pounds, who the fuck cares, right? That isn't going to have any implication on softball performance.
Mhm.
So that's the fun side of trying to find out, they want to know, they want to compete. They're not dumb. They know how to do the math of what's on the bar, but it's positioning it in a way that converts it. You hear of like backyard sports where you have highly competitive sport and then you got the kids playing street ball. Well, the performance in street ball is always pretty damn good because they're so loose and they're just having fun. I try to create that same environment in the weight room. Now we still have structure and they still know what exercises they need to be doing and this, that, and the other. But I want them coming in feeling loose. The music's on. Let's just have some fun. And then all of a sudden
Mhm.
they end up hitting 90% of the time.
That's a really interesting way of thinking about it because it goes back to that when people are PRing, when it gets to that way of the PR, there's always that extra mental load that you don't
Absolutely.
account for.
They don't.
And you're completely wiping that off, which is pretty fascinating.
Exactly. Or what I'll do is I'll let them, let's just say I wanted their weight to be 405 for a squat for a set of 2. And they ended up going 365 because that's what they felt that day, that was my last one. I see them do their first rep and they smoke it. I say, okay, go get 4. All right, now let's do the math. Let's go 405 times 2 or 365 times 4. The tonnage is actually higher than what they
Mhm.
would have done with the 405 times 2, and we got the same or similar training response with going less load. And they were only supposed to do 2 reps at 365. They doubled their output. That's a huge win for them mentally, right? Versus if I put 405 on the bar, they may have suffered through it or whatever, or maybe only got one of the 2 reps. And even if they accomplished it, they feel like leaving like I did less, whereby lightening it up and going 365 for more, I did more work and I still got the same or similar training effect. And now they leave and they feel like they won. And that is the
Mhm.
key. I always tell my coaches at the gym, win the day. Whatever her win looks like today, it might be different than yesterday's. If they miss one of her deadlifts, really push her on the weighted carries at the end. Let her challenge herself and feel gritty. And, she's got the sandbag and she fucking fought, and slam that down. And then when she leaves, she's not going to remember that deadlift. She's going to remember I left feeling accomplished. And if
Mhm.
you can do that with kids enough days in a row, good things happen, man. Good things happen.
I agree. And one thing that I always say to touch back on a point that you just made, when my athletes miss a lift, I always ask them, and then if I can see that they're really in their head about it,
Right.
how many times have you made a mistake during performances?
Sure.
How did that affect you? Oh, I
Right.
was dumb as well. What happened afterwards? Nothing.
Right. Right. Did
Cool.
you lose your life? Did you lose a family member? Did your dog die? Nothing. I always go down the rabbit hole with them just like that. All right. You missed this lift. What happens? I'm upset. Okay. You're upset. Then what happens? I feel like I haven't accomplished anything. Then what happens? uh, I go eat Mexican with my friends. Like it's like they run out of shit to be upset about. And it's like the world has got so much that it's
Mhm.
going to throw at them. We have to help them take things off of their bandwidth. It's just like in sport. You make a bad play, you can't afford to sit there and dwell on it because there's going to be
Mhm.
30 more plays. I had a girl the other day. She missed a squat. It was the heaviest weight she's done. She just got a little forward in her feet. And it wasn't that she wasn't strong enough. She just had technical breakdown and we fixed it. And I asked her, I said, listen, you play basketball. If you shoot one air ball, are you just going to stop shooting? And she said, no, Ray, I shoot air balls all the time and I just keep going. I said, it's the same principle in lifting. And guess what? It's even less important than
Mhm.
your basketball. So if you can overcome your flaws in basketball that has actual implication on your performance, you damn sure can overcome, performance training flaws that don't even they are important, right? But they don't correlate. A missed back squat
Yeah.
doesn't correlate to a missed free throw. It doesn't. So, if you can overcome one, treat it the same. And that's what makes sports and training so beautiful, because I think there are those lessons that you can learn in the weight room that you can apply to real life. I look at it just from a personal standpoint with my habits and my discipline. I train every day. That's just what I do. And it's not to say that everybody has to do that, but it's like when I get that mental win for myself and I check that box, now when I go into my business or I go into my family life and there's something with my son, it's late, I'm tired, I had a long day, we'll train tomorrow. No, I just fought my ass off and I built that discipline in my own life. I'm going to give that to my son. I don't give a shit how tired I am, So I think that there's things that you can take from training and apply it to the real world, especially with you and I. Like the game we're playing now, we're training, for life, not necessarily for sport. And I think to be able to give those lessons to those kids who, guess what, 99% of them aren't going to be professional athletes. What can they take from us that they can apply when they're 30 years old? I
This
love,
is an amazing point. Amazing point.
yeah, I love when I get kids, they go to the pinnacle of sport. I've got a girl now that she trained with me in high school. She's now on the U.S. women's national team, going to go to the Olympics, the whole thing. It's a great story. It's awesome. I'm so proud of her, love her to death. And I'm glad to see her do that. But that's the 1%, right? The other side that makes me just as excited as that girl going to the Olympics is the 28-year-old boy who calls me, who hasn't trained with me in 8 years, and says, you know what, Ray, I just want to let you know I'm going to the local fitness center and I'm training 3 days a week because you taught me to positively associate with fitness when I was 16. And now at 28, I'm still going to the gym. And what's going to happen is that boy is going to live 10 years longer in his life because he chose to prioritize health and fitness than he would if he just went to college and drank beer and built shitty habits. That's why this time from 10 to 18, I feel is so important to make positive impressions on these kids, because if you can get this in their DNA now, you're going to buy them extra time on earth with the habits they built as a fucking teenager. It's pretty, I
100%.
think it's important stuff.
I always say that we don't just build athletes, we build humans.
Amen.
Now,
Yep.
not all coaches do this. Not all coaches give a fuck to do this.
Right.
But like you said, not everyone's going to make it pro, and
Right.
that's a realistic shit thing to say to
Right.
people. But
It
it's
is.
honest.
It's the
It's
data.
honest.
It's the data. Like that's you could
Yeah.
say I'm a dick, but like that's how it is.
So I look at it as okay. Some of my kids might not be professional athletes. What skills and other mentality aspects that I can give them in the weight room that builds out their life,
Right.
like consistency.
Love it.
If you're consistent, whatever you fucking do in life is going to work.
You're gonna win. Yep. That's right.
If you're working on grit and toughness, there's going to be times in your life the world doesn't give a fuck about you.
Right.
It's going
Yep.
to kick you in the nags, and you're going to suffer. Can you make it through it?
Amen. Yep. Yep. And that's why, again, at the end of all of our workouts, we do these weighted carries where they're carrying sandbags or kettlebells or cinder blocks. And the weighted carry is a great exercise. Obviously, there's a lot of physical benefits from it, but it's the ideology associated with it. And I encourage all the kids to do it and I get on them, but it's one of those things that if they miss them, I'm not going to jump their ass on it because the whole workout is done. But the reason I don't jump on them is because I understand at the end of the workout, I got to carry these fucking things. I don't want to do it. What's the point? What muscle does it work? They run through it. I'm just going to skip it. But it's like that. If you skip that, right? And I'm not forcing you to do it. Now, what are you going to skip in the real world when you're not forced or held accountable to do something? It's just like why professional athletes, they go their whole lives looking like they were cut out of stone. And then what happens? These guys, they get out of the NFL and 5 years later they're obese, right? Because it's like that the discipline that they had, they were forced to have that discipline because they had every resource under the sun, the nutritionist, the strength and conditioning coach, the chiropractor, they had all these things. And then now left to their own vices, they didn't have real discipline. They had faux discipline because they were required to do it. So that's one of those little tests that I do. And if any
Hmm.
of my kids are listening to this podcast when it comes out, the reason I'm not jumping you on it is because I want you to take the initiative to do that on your own. Because if you get really good at doing shitty, what seem menial
Hmm.
things, that's going to translate to later on in life when you're the last person in the office. Are you going to shut the lights off? Or are you going to walk away with the lights? No, I'm going to turn around every fucking time and go turn those lights off because I built that into me, right? That's where I think those little things are important.
Um, Thomas Newman actually showed me, well, taught me this, and he's a brilliant guy to speak with. We spent 3 hours on this podcast. Still by far one of my favorite ones to film.
Love it.
Um, but he specifically goes out of his way to give his athletes clients 24 reps of a specific percentage of their max lift,
Sure.
and he doesn't give them any information. Just do 24 at this. You can split the reps up however you want. Just do 24 at this specific weight. Go, and
Right.
that teaches them. Okay, am I going to make myself suffer through it? Do I do two tens, 1 4, or do I
Right.
do fives? What do I do? How do I
Right.
do it? And it gives you that mental gymnastics to be like, all right,
Amen.
okay.
And it's great because that's a way that they can rationalize with it too. You're
Hmm.
forced to put some initiative on yourself. And that's another thing I like too, is giving some of the clients autonomy. With the very bare bones beginner, I got to tell them everything, boom, boom, very cut and dry. But like I've got, a high level college baseball player with me yesterday. And we had bench press, and he's a very strong kid, very high performing athlete. Ray, can I do dumbbell press today instead? Of course, you know what I mean. Like I'm gonna
Hmm.
let that kid get into that his mental mindset there because it's like I don't give a fuck about bench press, right? I care about upper body strength. And if you, who is a high performing athlete, prefers one exercise over another, I'm not going to stand here and you're doing it my way. You know what I mean? It's giving them a
Hmm.
little bit of autonomy when they earn that. There are some people that you got to push them for every set and every rep of the exercise because they'll skimp on a rep. And all that is, I used to knock those people and say, they don't want it. But it's just immaturity, right? We're creatures that have evolved to take the path of least resistance. Maybe that girl who wants to skip a rep isn't held accountable at home and she can get away with whatever the hell she wants. So I've got to stick that to her. Whereas there's some kids that I know I have to I got to protect them from themselves because if I tell them to do 8 reps, they'll do
Hmm.
20 reps. You know what I mean? So it's again, this goes back to conscious coaching and those archetypes of the different styles of people. It's knowing when to push and when to pull and
Hmm.
how to do it appropriately, right?
100%. When I was at UW, there was this athlete, and he's a freak athlete, like 18 years old, 225 bench. This kid got a 20 piece.
Oh, wow.
Like he's a freak athlete, like freak athlete. But he Coach AJ said this. We were doing like I call them coffins, which is like you run around the circle, and each
Right,
time
right.
you kind of have to get faster.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yep.
but he was over the pace that he was supposed to be doing.
Sure.
And Coach AJ was like, "You can't beat science."
Right.
Sure as hell,
Oh,
the next
yeah.
lap he was behind. But like
Absolutely.
that determination is you need it,
Oh, for
but
sure.
you also need to know when to reel that in and be like, okay, let's. I know you've got it. I know you want to do it, but
Right.
let's be a little bit smarter. And
100%.
I think this comes from experience and really coaching athletes, and not giving to peer pressure from your athletes as well.
Yeah.
That's a
Oh, it's
fucking big
hard.
one.
Oh, it's a bear. Absolutely.
There was a time where we were PRing on bench, and the kid I had on could have very well done it,
Right.
but in my head I was like, at what cost?
Right. Exactly. Now he
He's got
fucked up a
practice.
rotator cuff and yeah, right. Right.
He's got a practice to go to afterwards. I would love to see it because I believe in you and I love to see it.
Amen.
But I also need to think about your next practice and the one after that.
Right.
So although it'd be awesome to see you PR, that's not what's on the card today, and that's not
Right.
what we're doing.
And that takes discipline from you, right? Because of course you want to come on, motherfucker. You want to do that, but and again, that's where there's a fine line of being able to say, like, I want to see it for you too, right? Because sometimes
Hmm.
if you don't let them attempt it again, they take that as you don't believe in me, which is not the case. Obviously that's the relationship side of it. I kind of flirt two different sides of it. If it's a younger kid and I know that they're not that strong to begin with, and I know maybe they missed it because their elbow flared or whatever, I'll let them go swing the bat one more time. And then the other side of the spectrum, I had a boy who just box squatted 600 pounds. He missed it.
Wow.
He missed it 6 months ago is when he missed it. And he was so fucking irate. And I'm coming in tomorrow and I'm trying it again. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you just put 600 pounds on your back yesterday. You're going to try. And I talked him off the ledge. And 6 months went by. We continued to train hard, do the things. And then he smoked it 2 weeks ago. And that amount of time, the fact that that kid was willing to, and I've got a great relationship with him. I may have let him try it 3 weeks later or 6 weeks later. He went a whole 6 months and said, I'm just going to fucking trust Ray. And he barely missed it when he first missed it. He probably could have done it. Like I said, 3 weeks later, another training cycle, boom, you would have hit it. The only reason he missed it, he'd never felt 600 pounds on his back before. So it
Mhm.
was a shock to his CNS. He just didn't know. And then he was willing to go 6 months and then smoke it. That's the kind of discipline that I'm after. Whereas, a lot of times we have kids will do like a jump over a hurdle where I just let them freestyle. They run and jump over and they want to get over the hurdle. I've had girls that try it 27 times and on the 28th time they finally hit it, right? And it's like the reason is yes, the determination and grit, but it wasn't that high to begin with. Where you get a world-class jumper, he's got one or two shots at that jump because of his outputs being so high. You try three or more, and I prove it to the kids. Like we do vertical jump testing all the time, and they want a vertical jump on that fucking thing 15, 18, 20 times. Well, I make them record their number, right? After that third jump, the likelihood of you improving your vertical jump
Mhm.
on that test is astronomically low. So we can do 17 of them and make you tired, or we can move on to the next exercise that's actually going to build your power to come back and jump higher. You know what I mean? So that's how I teach them is show like there is a point of diminishing. I'll sit here till Christmas if you want me to. You're going to fucking
Mhm.
jump higher, So it's just a matter of kind of showing them. And that's why I love to test the metrics.
Mhm.
You can yell at me and say, "Oh, Ray, you're an asshole for not letting me try." Here's the like, you're not doing it any better, buddy. I love
Mhm.
you, but you're not.
I think you summed that up really well there. You're teaching. And
Right.
that's something that a lot of people miss. It's that teaching element of what we're doing.
Amen.
We don't have to justify everything that we do, but
Right.
it's also good to do it because it shows the kids that you know what you're talking about. And it goes
Ex-
back to that qualification thing. You don't
Absolutely.
need all these qualifications if you can explain why
Right.
and it
Right.
rationalize it in a way for them to make sense of what's
For
happening.
sure. And to your point, like we talked about earlier, some don't give. If I just told, like, there was a girl today, if I told her to do 3 backflips and run into traffic, she'd say, yes, sir. That's just the kind of, if I tell her, hey, that was your last jump, you're done. Yes, sir, I got it. And that done, no care at all. I don't fucking need to know the science of the stretch shortening cycle. Just thank you. That's fine. Other kids, they want to know where they should put their big toe and how much
Mhm,
force into the ground. So it's like you find those balances of like, all right, Ben wants to know. Sarah, yes, sir, I got you. No worries. So it's, you got to reserve your bandwidth as a coach too. If you sit there and try to explain everything under a sun to a kid that doesn't give a
mhm,
shit, you just wasted energy. There's going to be a kid next hour who wants to know every fucking nook and cranny. So save it for that guy. And it's not that you don't
mhm,
care about the one that isn't interested, but to me, if I'm not interested in trumpets and you try to tell me the science of trumpet manufacturing, you can waste your breath, right? I respect you for knowing, I guess, but I don't care. So
mhm,
that's where, you learn when to give and when to just let
mhm.
it be, right?
I love this story for its simplicity as well. So I had a very specific guy who wanted to know everything. He was an O lineman,
Yeah,
and he asked, "Why are we doing bench? I don't see the point in it." I was like, "Okay, let's walk through the movement,
right,
see how it might apply to your sport." That's all I said.
right.
He was like, "Got you."
Yeah,
So we just fucking went.
right, 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 right. Yeah, and it's fun too. I would say like if I could pick, right? I don't want the kid who's not interested at all. And I also don't want the kid that's going to be, paralysis by analysis to where like for the bench press, all right, I've got my feet locked in, I'm squeezing my core. I love the technique side, but he's got so much going on that he just can't fucking lift weights. Where then I'll have a kid lay down right behind him. His fucking left foot's dancing and he's talking to me about that, and he'll do twice the weight. You know what I mean? It's like there's got to be some point, right, where you just got to be. It's bad language, but you just got to be a motherfucker, man. Just shut up and lift the weight. Some of them will say, "Well, this 45-pound plate feels a little heavier than this one," and like meanwhile they're sitting here like, "Oh, let me grab that 45 because it's the same." You
Mhm.
got some other pit bull in the corner over here who doesn't give a fuck if he's got a 45 or a 35 on. Whatever's on the bar, he's going to fucking pull off the floor. You know what I mean? I like that kind of attitude more so than like the highly nuanced, like, majoring in the minors, so to speak.
Yeah, there's an athlete I coach, and he's like that.
Right,
He and we've got this running joke that he can only lift if I'm watching him,
right.
because if not, he's got that paralysis by analysis where
Oh,
he's
yeah,
just so much in his head.
right.
I'm just like, okay, let's break it down. What do you need basic to lift?
For
He's like,
sure.
so he's got this thing where he has to have the right breath. So
Right.
I allow him to have the right breath,
Yep.
right? I allow him to have the right breath. As he's lifting, I'm going power, pull, catch.
Yep.
That's the three words I let him have,
Right.
and
Right.
he
I
nails
love
it.
it. Right.
And he nails it. But if I'm not there to say, okay, these three words of war matters. Let's breathe. Let's catch that breath and go.
Right.
He's just
For
constantly
sure,
fucking
going
running.
through it, and then he'll do a second breath and a third breath, and then it's like they're fatigued before they even get there. It's just like when I have these kids squat. If they're getting a heavy squat, and I got my really strong athletes better at it now, but you'll notice, and you probably see it, some kids they walk the bar out and they're nervous in their head, and they're sitting there for 10 seconds with the bar up here, you know, getting ready to go, getting ready to go, just fucking go. What they don't realize is like you have that compressive load that's just
Mhm,
weighing on you, and it's a heavy weight. Now, I don't want on the other side, walk out, go right now. Like, get yourself set up, get your win, and go right now. You know what I mean? Just because they don't realize. Same thing with the bench press. Oh, you're going for a bench press PR. Every other rep, I unrack, it's your weight, you go. Now, with the heaviest weight of your life, you want to sit here and hold it over your chest for 8 seconds and then go. You're going to do a top end isometric and fatigue everything and then get to the bottom and wonder why it didn't work. I've had so many kids that they do that 5 second hold, nerve,
mhm,
nerve, nerve, and they miss. 2 minutes later, I look at them, I put my hands on their shoulder, and I say, listen, you lay down, you grab that bar like you're trying to kill somebody. And when I give you that bar, you just be a motherfucker. And then all of a sudden,
mhm,
boom, right now. And again, I don't know if it's because I scared them half to death or it's just the science behind it, but it's like, it's just react. Sports are a reactive
mhm,
game. Yes, you have to think and have IQ and all these things, but let's practice our fingers and our grit. Let's do that in our sub max sets. It's like some of these kids, when we do our squats or deadlifts, they work all the way up to 99%. And then, oh, I'm going to go put a belt on. And I make the comparison like, all right, let's just say you're a hitter in baseball and you've got this swing that's just grooved, groove, groove. And then now on the biggest at bat of your life, we're going to change a variable and we're going to raise our hands 3 inches. No, just do the same thing that you've been doing. And I'm not, if you want to wear a belt, wear a belt. Half the kids I've got to teach them, they put a belt on too tight. They can't even brace because they're suctioning themselves so tight. But to go belt, 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 and then take the belt off, that's probably not a good idea. To go no belt, no belt, no belt, and then ratchet, a device to your abdomen, probably not the best thing either. So it's just
I
the
I have a
practice.
love hate relationship with belts and straps.
Right.
I
Me
see
too.
some of the points. Sorry,
Excuse you.
but for me, it's when do we need it? Like for
Right.
me personally, what I'm not going to do pounds because I can't figure that out that
Right.
quick.
Right. Right. No, I get it.
If I will only strap myself in, and that's why I call it. I will only strap myself in 120 above.
Right.
That's
For
because
sure.
that's me getting up to that limit where either my grip can't handle
Sure.
it, but
Right.
I will always work until my fingers slip off that bar.
Right.
Because
Right.
I
Right.
like my forearm strength to always be building.
Right. For sure. For sure.
Same with the belt. I want my core to be able to handle these loads, these pressures, for as heavy as I can without any interjection methods.
Sure. No, and I agree. And the other thing, you look at it from an athletic performance side, I say to people all the time, like, when do you wear this belt in sport? Oh, I never wear a belt. So now to me, I'd rather have the added core strength of squatting 20 pounds less beltless, right? But then I get some kids, and it's like, this. there are some battles that are worth fighting and others that aren't worth fighting. So it's like, do I sit here and like argue with a 16-year-old boy over no belt. Well, no, if it makes him feel psychologically better and he's worn a belt for the last 4 years at his school train, like, okay, just put the fucking and do your thing. You know what I mean? But yeah, if it was up to me, and I was a belt guy during my like heavy lifting days, and I saw the value of it and I learned how to use it. But then it got to the point where it was like, all right, I can put this belt on and squat 20 more pounds. Or like nobody gives a shit if I do that, right? So why not just squat 20 pounds less and build better core stability?
I heard this from Vernon Griffin,
Yeah,
and he has this thing where he doesn't really care what the athlete does to prepare himself for it. And I
right.
think the example he gave was foam rolling. Like if
Yep.
that helps them do whatever,
If it just feels
cool.
good, then do it.
I'm not,
Right.
yeah, I'm not going to shit on them feeling good
Right.
for my own ego, for my own benefit.
Exactly.
I'm just going to let them do it. And like I've watched endless podcasts with him, and he's someone that's just like so on it.
For
That's it's
sure.
fucking ridiculous.
He's probably my closest friend in the industry, and he's somebody that I
Oh.
respect and I've learned a lot from. But and what's so cool about him, and I've got to know him. Obviously, I know him as the performance coach, but I also know him as the human and the way that he operates in life and his mindset. Some of the stuff that maybe not seen on social media. But what's cool is as advanced and as smart as he knows that he can be smart to a fault and sit there and become egotistical and try to outsmart the room. Or what I like to say is he can explain it to a third grader. He does some things with his like personal growth. He's been in courses. He flew down to Atlanta a couple years ago and he snuck himself into an anatomy trains course that you had to have like a nursing degree for, fudged his way into this thing just to learn. He's that type of guy that wants to know layers upon layers of what he needs to know. But what's so great about him is he could help my mom understand what the hell he's trying to say, right? But he could also speak to the PhDs and not get outsmarted. It's pretty
Mhm.
cool when you got a guy like that. And I learned from him that yeah, you got to continue growing. There's a funny story about him. When I was a younger coach, I was talking to him, and we always say that the term in the, don't sweat the small stuff. Well, I was looking at a kid and he was going through something and it was like a minor detail that I knew how to fix, but I was like, fuck it, just let it be. And I sent the video to Vernon. I said, Vernon, would you sweat this? Would you just let this go? And he wrote back to me. He said, sweat the small stuff, chase the breadcrumbs. And I'm like, motherfucker. I wanted him to validate me and say, Ray, yeah, let it go, be lazy, but he's saying, no, find out why that kid's knee is shifting just a little bit. Is it ankle? Is it knee? Is it hip? And that was so important to me. And that's why I consider him such a good friend. A buddy would have told me, fuck it, man. It's fine. Vernon was willing to tell me, you're fucking wrong, Ray. And I was like, whoa, and I really grew a respect for him. And now I'm not going to paralyze the kid that I'm trying to fix with all the jargon, but I'm going to take the time to fix that. And that thing that probably happened 7 years ago has helped me. That again, I don't lose my mind over everything under the sun. But if there's a fix that I could probably get away with leaving alone, or I could take 5 minutes and help the kid, I'm going to fucking take the 5 minutes now. And that was just a character thing with Vernon that really spoke volumes to me.
Yeah, I think that's a really important key to hammer on as well. It's just like, and again, it's what we've been speaking for the whole thing is like be
Right.
there for your kids.
Yep. That's
Like,
all it is. Yeah, exactly.
and the thing that I think about as well is like, and again, this is from my own perspective. Like, I'm from a neighborhood that's not the best,
Right.
and my strength and conditioning coach, when I was 13, he took the time to say, "Forget about that stuff. I'm going to give you unlimited access to the gym.
Right.
You're going to coach with me. You're
Right.
going to coach the people younger than you. Let's spend all this time build." And that's why I'm in this industry.
Right. And
It's
he
like
didn't have
he
to do that. He could have said, I'm busy and fucking, see ya. Right.
100%.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
instead of like, and he's the one. So the way that I was in a performance program from 13 all the way to 18,
Oh, beautiful. Awesome.
and the way it worked is like from 13 you have strength and conditioning. The year after that you're sort of like yourself.
Sure.
So
Oh,
what he
wow.
does is like the first year he really teaches you the lifts. teaches you different methods, so strength, power, speed, whatever. He teaches you it.
Sure.
And then the last phase that we're on, he says, okay, look at your own performance. What do you need? Build a program for that.
Oh wow. So he puts you to the fire. Like you
Yeah.
got skin in the game.
And I think that I was the only one that actually took that on board. Everyone else sort of just kept
Right.
asking questions for the program. But I was like, all right, let's fucking figure this out.
Right.
I'm forward at rugby, so I'm slow, but I'm powerful and I'm strong.
Right.
What do I need? I need to be faster and I need to be working on that high power phase.
Sure.
So what do I need for that? Let's look. I need box jumps. I need explosive movements in there. I don't
Sprint
really
work
need bench.
probably. Right.
Yeah. So from then I just got thinking that first program, by the way, fucking terrible.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Terrible.
you thought it was great at the time, right? You're just like
100%.
I was a fucking genius when I was 19. I was brilliant, and then at 27 I realized I was an idiot, but yeah, it's funny how that always
But,
goes.
like, so from there, like I've just held them up to that standard of like, okay, I'm in this industry for that reason. If I can help a kid out, no matter how big or small it is, I'm going to fucking do it.
Amen.
Like I
Yeah.
will message. I still message the boys that UW. Like some of them are in the NFL now, and I still go fucking message them. I was like,
Right.
if I see them doing some cool shit, I'm like, fucking, let's go,
Right. Yeah, yeah. No,
let's
it's
fucking go.
It's awesome, and not a lot of people will do that. Something that helped me too is like obviously I have children of my own now. My 5-year-old son, and again he's 5. I know he's not cognitively there to like get everything perfect, but like there are things that I can correct and help him with. A lot of times I don't like to put too much coaching on him because I want his body and his mind to naturally figure things out. But what I ask myself is like, if this boy or girl was my son or daughter who I'm training, would I fix that? And now here I am with my son, who one day is going to be 12 years old, and I'm teaching him really like the fundamentals of like I'm going to fucking go to the nth degree to help him to be the best that he can be. And if I'm willing to do that, who's my own son, and I claim to love these kids like I do, and I don't give them that same level of service, who the
Mhm.
hell am I, right? You know what I mean? So that's something like I see it all the time. Like my son is in gymnastics now, and he's got a Ukrainian gymnastic coach. I love the guy. That guy, my son, he started when he was 3. He coaches his ass off. 3, 4, 5-year-olds who don't, they're crazy going 100 miles an hour. Like they're not
Old
paying.
school coaching.
But he's coaching them versus like sometimes I'm up at the local school and I see a coach training a group of kids and he's sitting there like this on his phone. Yeah, one more lap, and it's like, would you treat your fucking kid that way? But you're willing to do that to other, that drives me ballistic. And that
Mhm.
really helped with perspective with me. Maybe what I might have let slide 8 years ago before I had kids. Now I look at that kid who might be making a mistake, who needs a little bit of coaching. That he'll probably figure it out. What I tell my 8-year-old son when he's that age, he'll probably no. I'm going to coach him. I'm going to give that kid the same level of care.
100%. Um, no, this has been amazing, and I love speaking to coaches. And I said this at the start, like this is selfishly for me because I learned so much from it. But I love to put this out because other coaches need to hear it, and it's something that we touched on offline as well. Is like it gives us the voice to really show people right from wrong, and
Sure, spread the good message.
in a social media age where like what we said offline is like there's so much shit things
Yeah,
being posted out there
right.
that we kind of need that voice and that channel for people to be like, okay, who are the coaches I can actually trust and listen to? And
Sure.
for us, the coaches that we look up to and trust, and they're not on social media.
Right, for
They're just
sure. Some of those,
fucking not.
yeah, exactly. And that's you just summed up why I do it. I don't do it because of some ego kick and I want to, feel powerful or I got this many followers. It's like I feel like it's my due diligence as somebody
Mhm.
who loves this industry to be able to share quality information. I'm not going to help everybody. The algorithm isn't going to get attracted to some guy telling you fundamental stuff, but it might help that one guy who's in Utah or who's in London or who's in France. That man, this guy, I like the way he does it. And if something that I do can help one person, I feel like it's worth it because maybe that one person gets a bigger platform than I do, but they took something from me. That's how you make an impact. A lot of people just sit there with their arms folded and bitch about it. No, I'm not going to bitch. I'm going to do something about it. Right. And I feel like staying silent, right? That's a vote for the opposition. When you stay silent on a matter, that's saying I condone the way that it is. I believe in that because I don't have the stones to step up and speak the truth. I'll just silently bitch about it. But what they don't understand is they're condoning the way that it is by not doing anything about it. You know.
And I think that's it, is just having the right people to follow. And like, I'm always very supportive of all the coaches that I like. If an S&C coach that is coming up to me, I was like, I've got this question, what should I do? I always spend however long
Damn
being
right.
with
Damn,
it.
damn
If they
right.
want to video call me, let's fucking go.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
always like to point them out to the coaches that I look up to as well, because for them, it also shows you that I've been there. I've tried to speak to coaches, and they've gave me
Yeah. Right. Right. But
so for me, I'm just like the one thing I hate is gatekeeping.
oh,
I
for
will never
sure.
fucking gatekeep a day of my life.
Right. No
If
way.
I know
Because
something that you want to know, I'm not going to be a dick and be like, no, this is my secret.
right, for sure. Because guess what? You and I got it from somebody else. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants, and to pretend like we're not is pretty foolish. Like, yeah, you got to have your own flair and put your own spin on things. But every damn thing I did in my weight room today, from the box jumps to the broad jumps to the trap bar dead, it's all been done before, right? I've got my
Mhm.
own method that again was stolen from somebody. So it's like I can sit here and be like, oh, I've got the secret sauce. Where you can make a secret sauce is in the dedication to the people that you're working with, not the exercise prescription, right? I stole everything from Charlie Francis and Joe DeFranco, and I've always thought that the best coaches are the greatest thieves, right? They can take the most from the most quality smart people and then build out their own program. But I laugh at these
100%.
influencers. Somebody got on there
All
and said, you know,
everything that I've sort of built my program around is something that I've stole from different coaches and adapted them into my way of looking at things.
right,
That's what programs are. Is like, you're okay. Let's look at uh, Les Spillman. Let's look at,
yep,
like, I look at you and your stuff, and I look at, like, let's see what Ray's doing. Let's
right,
see what fucking Michael Boyle is doing. Let's
yep,
steal things from all.
yep,
Like, Ron McKeefe is one of my biggest fucking mentors, and I'm
right,
always like picking. Like, I chose to spend my exit interview with him, questioning him about his program, and if I interpreted it right,
right, right.
like, he has this 5 tier system where he has 4 exercises in each tier. And I thought about the game and how he looks at the game, and I was like, okay, are you splitting it into 4 quarters and an overtime? And he's like,
Right.
yep. And
Right.
then I was like, so 4 exercises, 4 quarters, right? He's like, yep. Each exercise 15 seconds to a minute on. Correct. I was like,
Right.
so he's looking at splitting the game up,
Right.
and how he can develop the athletes and still condition them, use the
Right.
conditioning element of the
Sure.
exercises
Sure.
to build out their conditioning and workout. And I was
Right.
like, that's fucking
Oh,
mind
for
blowing.
sure. And you think about it, and once you figured it out, you realize it ain't that complex though. But it's like he made what looked very complex present very easy, and then obviously you use your intuition to figure it out. But yeah, to your point too, it's like we don't. I steal a lot from, but you also want to make it your own in the sense that like just trying to carbon copy somebody, especially in the social media era. Oh, Ray's does high box squats. That's all he does. He sells out on that. Okay, go ahead, sell out on your high box squats and watch it not work. What they don't see is all the other stuff that goes along with it. So I think, you have to be good at like understanding that what you and I are watching on social media, even Vernon Griffin, he's great. I love him. But like to sit here and call him, and I joke with him about this because I tell him, oh, all you do is mobility. You don't actually lift, you just do hip circles. And that's where he's like, listen, and he's teasing me, but it's like, that's 1% of it. My arms are still bigger than yours because I'm lifting weight. So it's funny that like people like, yeah, he made his stick doing his mobility stuff, but to think that like he doesn't prioritize, you
Mm,
know, resistance training is asinine. But there's people out there that think he just does clamshells.
100%.
So
I'm also laughing at that when you said high box jump, squats, because you've recently posted, I think it was a story of a kid replying to your story being like, they don't see the other 95% of what we do. They just saw that I'm not squatting below parallel or whatever it
Right.
was.
Right. Yeah. It's hilarious, I have fun with it, because again, I recognize anytime you post something on the internet, you leave yourself open to misinterpretation. Like that's just the way it is. A lot of people on the internet are assholes and they don't want to
Mhm,
think objective and they don't want to think big picture. But again, then I have 2 dozen guys that reach out and they want to learn what's your theory behind that. And that's why I do it. Right. It's
mhm,
not to impress some guy that's like, oh, well, you should probably like, I don't give a shit what you're doing as a non-professional athlete at the box gym there, Terry.
mhm,
So it's funny how people, they feel like they need to tell you that you're wrong without understanding any of the context. That's like saying that, hey, I saw the sky was blue one time. That means it never rains. What I mean,
mhm.
what? So,
100%.
but
What is your PR song? I love to
what's
get coaches.
Oh,
Yeah,
so my PR song, I don't hit too many big PRs anymore, but the one that I would listen to was "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor."
nice.
I'd have to tell you, I'd have to look up who sung it, but that was my jam back in the day. Now with the kids these days, hey, some of them could care less. I've got a couple, they won't get under the bar unless their song is on. So
Mm,
it's funny how, music does have a definite impact on this
100%.
psychological preparedness. So.
An uncommon one. What's your conditioning playlist like?
Yeah, so and it was different years ago, but now I'm very much into like country and western type
Mm,
music. So now again, where I train so regularly, instead of trying to get like heightened for this one big output, I'm more like slow and
draw it
monotonous
out.
just because I believe in like the like boring mundane repetition. So I almost find it from like a flow perspective just to listen to like very slow, easy going.
Mm,
I still apply a lot of effort to what I'm doing, but thinking in the context of marathon versus sprint, I'm not trying to get like amped. You know what I mean? I'm just flowing. So,
mhm. I agree. I've got very gentle playlists, and it's sort of like you can distract yourself by singing along.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What is some advice that you would give newer strength and conditioning coaches or coaches looking into starting strength and conditioning?
Sure. Most importantly is be a sponge. I think it's very important to pay attention, listen to successful people, and then also not be clouded by some of the past resources that you might have had. Sometimes where you and I got real world hands on experience from people that actually knew what the hell they were talking about, some of these kids, their only resources are some guy on TikTok that they don't know what he doesn't know what he doesn't know, but they formulate these opinions because some big muscle bound guy who's on a gram a test every other day told them they should do it this way, that's how it should be. I've always thought that, hey, find successful coaches and minimize yourself, be a sponge to them and learn, and then also be willing to do the ugly stuff. Those things, sweeping the floors, staying extra, being there early. Pop culture wants to try to convince you that, oh, you're worth more than you are now and you don't even have to work hard anymore. Just complain and bitch about it and you'll get more dollars per hour. No, you still have to, figuratively speaking, pay the man. You got to put in your time, you have to learn. And I think the willingness to do unsexy things in the beginning will translate into your success later. I firmly believe that.
100%. Turn the W's.
Yep,
You
that's
have to
right.
turn them. You
That's
have
right.
to. It's the mundane stuff. Clean the dumbbells,
Yep.
mop the floors,
Yep.
clean
Wipe
up the
down the
chalk.
benches. Yep.
Like I've
Yep.
no idea how many times I've cleaned up chalk.
Oh,
I
for
hate
sure.
cleaning up chalk.
Oh, it sucks, but yeah, it's that stuff that it's not just cleaning up chalk; it's what that leads to later. And I think
Mhm,
if you can frame it like that, and that just becomes of, hey, we have standards for everything, and leaving the chalk dust out probably not going to hurt
mhm,
anybody. But what it does hurt is it's infringing upon the standard you've set for yourself, and that's where there's negative implications to come from that later that you may not see in that 30 seconds you save by not cleaning it up.
100%. No, I appreciate you so much for coming on, Ray.
You bet.
It's a true pleasure and honor to be able to pick your brain and see how you run your programs and specifics of it.
Oh, absolutely, man. I enjoyed it. I appreciate you having me on.
Nah, it's all good. Peace.